Come on, ladies and gentlemen, could you put your hands together and make a little noise for and welcome Megha Ajwani, Head of Strategic Alliances, Snapdeal.com. Thank you. Please also welcome Mr. Sumat Chopra, Head of E-Commerce, Godrej Nature's Basket. We will have Mr. Arun Sardeshmukh, Co-founder and Chief Executive Officer, FashionArrow.com, joining us during the course of the session. Right now, please put your hands together and welcome our moderator, Mr. S. Raghunandan, Chairman, ISCF 2015, and the Chief Executive Officer of Virtuous Retail. It's over to Mr. Raghunandan and our duo, who will shortly be a trio.
Okay, first of all, good afternoon. We're missing one member, Arun, but I believe he's on his way and he should be a ready minute. So we will start and hopefully Arun will join us. So we're really going to talk about true convergence. There's a lot of noise in the media and when you talk to retailers and a whole lot of other people about this whole business of online versus offline. There's discounting going on, there are various things going on. I think we don't want to focus on that at all. I think we just want to focus on retail and convergence in retail. Whether it's online, whether it's offline, it doesn't matter. End of the day, and I think this is what we even started with yesterday when we had the first session in the conference, that this is all about reinventing shopping centers and enhancing customer experience. And that's going to be very much the focus of our discussion today with this panel. So we have an interesting panel. We have Megha, who's from Snapdeal, a pure online retailer. We have Sumat, who's spearheading e-commerce and technology initiatives for a brick-and-mortar retailer, Nature's Basket, but also looking at the online space. And shortly we'll have Arun, which is great because here is a sort of a traditional retailer who's worked across several of the best-known fashion businesses in this country and has now created his own online fashion business. So it's a nice, interesting mix. So what I'd like to do is touch upon one or two areas and then we'll quickly move it into a panel discussion. One of the trends which I want to highlight, which is happening across the world, is true convergence, whether you call it omni-channel, I don't know what to call it, but a lot of people who started traditionally and only with online businesses have now set up experience stores. They could be in high streets, they could be in malls, they could be anywhere. But customers are looking to enhance the experience, whether it's touch feel, whether it's a range of products they want to see, whether they want to try on stuff. So different customers are looking at issues differently. And I thought this is interesting as a sort of a starting point of this discussion to look at what's happening externally and then we'll sort of draw inferences from our own market. So I'm going to play two short videos. If I can have the first video followed by the other one. Thank you. Okay, this is a brand called Warby Parker. So while we're waiting, let me tell you, Warby Parker started as a pure play online retailer selling spectacles. In the US, when spectacles used to cost about $250 to $300 a frame, they launched it for $95. Okay, what they started doing was sending 5 pairs to your home for you to try out. You select the ones you like, they take it back, they make the prescription glasses and send it to you. And for every pair of spectacles you buy, they were donating one to charity. Okay, what they found was over a period of time, customers wanted more. They wanted to see a bigger range, they wanted to experience, they wanted someone to advise them. So they've opened a flagship store in New York, and now they're opening stores all over. I think what we'll do is, can we switch to the second video, because we really can't hear anything. Okay, this is a fashion brand called Bonobos. Again, started as a pure online retailer.
Hi, this is Oliver St. John from USA Today. I'm here with Anna Ziskin, the Bonobos Guide Shop, who's going to take me through the store and show me what it's all about.
Hey, so this is our wash chino table. This is essentially where our company started, with these guys in 2007, and we're known for better fitting pants. Everything else in the shop is kind of modeled off of them. As you can see, they come in a whole slew of colors, tons of which to choose from. And we have them in both straight and slim. The way it works is we size you up in one of these size runs, all in this Fram Slacker color. And then once we get your perfect size, your perfect fit, then you can choose from the array of colors. So here are some Bonobo shirts, just like pants. They also come in slims and straights. The beauty of it is you come in here, get your size, you're good to go from here on out. Yeah, so these fit you out. How do these feel in the waist?
Oh, they feel perfect in the waist.
And then the shirt, how does the shirt feeling?
It feels great.
So this is our slim cut, and you are slim, so this does fit you well. But you also, I think you'd be just as comfortable in one of our standard fits. So how does this one fit?
Oh, it feels great.
Now you know when you're shopping online that you're more comfortable in the standard fit. So once we get all of your sizes done and all of the colors that you like, we can run through and place the order right from the guide shop. They're delivered to your home within 1 to 2 business days, free of charge, of course.
So we founded Bonobos to really create a better shopping experience for men.
I think
Initially, we
let's stop
thought
the video.
we could do it purely on a website, but we realized in talking to our customers that...
Yeah, I'm sorry about the quality of the audio. Basically, the concept here, and I've been to one of the experience stores in the US, is you fix an appointment, you go to the store, you have a style guide who meets you, they find out what you're looking for, then they ask you to try various things to assess fit, fabric, purpose, etc. And once this is done, then you can place the order in the store. They sell nothing in the store. Even if you want to buy, you can't buy it in the store. And then Arun is here. Yeah, please come. And then they actually ship it to you. So it's a great model of an experience store. So I think without wasting any more time, let's just jump into the panel discussion, and Arun, just jump in whenever you want to. Okay. The first question I want to ask the panel, and start with you, Megha, is really, how well do you know your customers? What do you know about your customers? How well do you know about them? What do you know about customers? How do you analyze them? What do you know about them?
Right. So we're a technology company, and we focus a lot on analytics. So
just keep it a little closer, can't you?
A little closer. Can you hear me now? Sorry. So we focus a lot on analytics, and we actually use data to guide us in terms of understanding our customers. What are their buying trends? What is it that they look at? What are the price points that they're comfortable shopping with us? And for example, in the fashion business, we actually try to see the trends. What are the products of the season, and within that, what is it that we can sell on Snapdeal? And we work very, very closely with our sellers to kind of, and we have like over 100,000 sellers today on Snapdeal, and we actually work closely with them to help them understand what is it that the customers want, which direction they should be moving in, and they in turn build their business by working on the analytics and the trends that we share. So that's basically some of the ways in which we would be doing it.
Yeah, Sumit, good.
Yeah. Yep, in fact, we use SOT technology to a big deal too, both in the online space and in the offline space. In the online space, we use SOT technology to understand who our customer is. So we would typically split our customer base into different segments. So we would pick a 25 to 35-year-old male. We would see what their shopping patterns are, what categories do they buy, how frequently do they buy, what is it that they like or don't like about the web platform. And so we would basically look to split our customer bases and look to analyze what is it exactly that people buy and do. And that helps us to better target what experience we give them through the web platform. So the sort of products we show on the homepage, to the recommendations at checkout, to what sort of emailers and how we communicate with the customer base. It's all based on data. In the offline space, we have a loyalty program where we keep track of the customer's bill spends, and we have a full-time data person in-house, and their job is to mine customer data to understand how can we increase sort of repeat purchases of that customer in store. And so we also look to build a experience to our high-end stock customers who we have. If we know our customer is spending more than 5,000 per month at our store, we will have a dedicated shopper assist them in store. So we use technology to identify these customers so that we have a lot more of a targeted experience for them, both in the online store and in the offline store also.
Yeah, I mean, I come from a earlier avatar of operating physical to online. So a lot of data that you would normally get from an offline business is available online as well. So we know geography, we know spend levels, we know RFM, all of that. But we tend to bucket customers intuitively on how they behave on the site. So clearly we have those who shop on the mobile versus the web platform, those who use the app versus the otherwise. We know time of day, we know surfing history. So there are times when there's a lot more data available to understand behavior or even shopper behavior on the site that we track. Clearly we match your previous purchases and your previous browsing behavior to try and intuitively try to market to you in a individual manner. So lots of things that we do, your site experience could be different. Two people sitting next to each other on a table here could see a slightly different version of our site, or a ranking of products because of what you might have liked earlier. Similarly, if you're browsing a product, we might intuitively show you products that might interest you purely from what you might have bought earlier. So it's a very deep understanding of who is on the site and what they might have done earlier. It's all of that kind of data. So we know a lot about you, not at an individual level, but the machine or the system knows a lot about your behavior, just when you're on the site.
So, Arun, just staying with you, because we're all talking about technology. How, in your business in Fashionara, how are you making or using technology to make this a completely seamless process? Because I mean, you've spent years and years in the brick and mortar world in fashion, and now this. So, how do you make this a very, very seamless process?
When you say seamless, are you talking about from when you browse the site to have delivery?
Yeah, complete the whole process. If you can just focus on how you're using technology.
All right. So the fundamental to our business is that user experience, that cycle that you go through from when you want to shop and you come to our site down to the final point when we've delivered product to you, and you might even want a return of that product. Mm-hmm. That entire loop is the holy grail. That's the main thing that we would like for you to be delighted with, which gets you to come back. So let's just talk about a few points in that journey that we track. I spoke about what you see on the site. So to give you a small example, if you have repeatedly shopped for discounted products on our site, the first view that you might find when you come a fourth time could be discounted products first. Mm-hmm. So that's the first part, so the browsing experience. Once you have put product into a shopping cart, we clearly understand whether you're an existing customer or not. So we are already intuitively figuring out whether you're one of our existing customers. Mm-hmm. We show you, for example, the delivery points that you might have asked product in the past. You can choose that. So it just seems to you like we know you. Once you have clicked and said yes to that purchase, there's a notification that goes out to you that keeps you in touch with where your delivery is. More importantly, now on your My Account page, either mobile or otherwise, we show you a tracker that tells you exactly where the item is, including, for example, we are now beginning to ship a lot of product which is not in India. So you bought an item, the product is lying in New York, and you're expecting delivery. We'll tell you from that point on where the product is. Giving more information keeps you comfortable with the whole process.
Okay.
Once the product is in and we've shipped it, clearly there's a shipping notification to you. However, we handle our all our front-end delivery in 6 large metros is managed by us. So at that point now, the delivery champion is carrying an Android phone with an app and a easy tap device that lets customers pay by cash or card if they want. On the notification to you, we would advise you that there are items in your shipment that qualify for a free home trial. Okay. So when we are on the way, we call you and tell you that we are carrying your parcel. Do you want a trial of these products? Because we offer a service where you can get delivery, you try the products, you keep what you like, you return what you don't on that one trip itself. Mm-hmm. So there are times when customers ask for an alternate delivery address, so we switch deliveries. So you can see that whole process flowing, and at each point, for example, on the Android device is an app that lets our delivery champ tell us back that, hey, I've delivered this parcel, or it's a delivery attempt and the customer is not available, or a customer wants delivery at an alternate time. That's all handled, again, technology-wise, right? A easy tap reader allows the customer to pay for cash or card, by card if they wish at the front end. As soon as a delivery is made, is another loop that kicks in. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we tell you, thank you, your product is delivered, but we're kicking in with then a survey that goes out to you that you've got to then tell me how you like my experience. Based on that survey is then another loop that we start. So you can see that there is a full handoff at each point, and all of it is tech-driven. All of those loops are connected back seamlessly. So we know and we are tracking the entire experience right from when you came on the site to when you received it and you have said okay to that delivery. So it's just
for a minute, if I ask you to go back and wear your old hat as a traditional retailer, brick and mortar retailer, how much of this is possible? Why can't retailers do more stuff like this? I tell you, yesterday and through most of the day, we've been discussing this for some time, that retailers seem to be in some kind of a time warp, caught in a time warp. They're not able to react, the traditional retailers, because obviously this online retailing is a very recent phenomenon and it's hit them hard. I don't see a response coming. So, why can't a lot of the stuff that you're talking about be done by traditional retail?
See, I think the first part of that is recognizing the character of the walk-in customer that's come in. Who is that customer? In a physical retail environment, unless you do something about how you will recognize that person, either a swipe or any technology that allows me to know you, you're a guest, so I don't know much about you. So there is a first point of contact. I think there is technology that lets, there are environments where as you walk into that environment, I know you. That's a big disconnect between what happens online and what happens physical. Because a customer comes in, I actually as a salesperson don't know you. I don't know if you're a guest, you've never shopped with me, you're an occasional shopper, or you're one of my heaviest shoppers. I only know when you come to the billing counter with your bag, right, and I ask you your name or your card.
Or your loyalty program or whatever, yeah.
So if there is a way in asking for almost an entry card, entry pass, a ping, a swipe as you walk into the store, I think things will be different.
Okay.
There'll be a lot of what you do online can get translated offline as well. That's the first part.
I think that's an interesting take. So Megha, tell me, what is, in Snapdeal, to what extent are you using analytics? Some of the things Arun has said, are you doing something like this, something similar, something different?
Yeah, so just to add to what Arun explained quite in detail actually as to how online works and, so we work in a very similar way. However, being a marketplace, we use analytics, as I mentioned earlier, of course, to understand the buying patterns of our customers, what do they shop, what do they like. We use a lot of it to also create brand stores on our site, which in its own little way, I would say, would be like experiential zones, which we are talking about in the offline space or in malls. So this would essentially be a space on the site which is dedicated to a brand or dedicated to, so for example, we have a bridal store which would actually show you different looks that you could have, different looks for different occasions. So what would you wear for each of the different occasions, each of the different days, that for the mehndi, for the actual reception, for the for the fera, so on and so forth. And each of them would then create a look, and it would show you a page which would then talk about those looks and how you could recreate them with the various options that are available on the site. So it would then show you that these are the kind of things, these are the trends, this is what you could buy, these are available in all these colors, sizes, options, price range, whatever it is that you want. So the idea behind that, again, this is just one example that I'm giving you. We have, them in almost all categories, depending on where it really fits in. So the idea is to reach out to the customer and be able to tell them what are the trends of the season, so that, she as a bride, can understand that what it is that she wants to do, how does she want to go about it. Similarly, we have stores in our sports stores, which you can actually go and see what are the brands, what you should be using, what are people today using, and what are the health trends that they want to follow, so on and so forth. So we use analytics very, very, very strongly, even to create these kind of atmospheres within the site itself, which would allow people to get a better shopping experience and to try to basically bring them closer to what is happening traditionally also, and make things more easier for them in their shopping experience.
Okay. Now, Sumat, you're in a business selling food and grocery, right? Fundamentally. So, talk us through how they're using technology in a very different way, but how are you using it to understand the buying process better, understand customer behavior better? Like Arun says, is there some way you have of capturing this is a regular customer, this is a non-regular customer, this is an occasional customer, walk-in? How are you using technology and analytics in the food and grocery side?
Correct. Yeah, but in fact, so the first piece of analytics is data, actually. How do you get data about the customer? So what we are piloting in our stores now is this software called Beacon, where we'll ask our customers to download an app on their phone. And the moment they step into the store, we have these small Bluetooth-enabled Beacon devices, which is able to read people's mobile phones and know whom they actually are. So as the customer walks through the store, we know how much time the customer has spent on what shopping aisle. We know at the checkout time what the customer has bought. So without being invasive and asking the customer what their name is or bothering them, because we have a lot of celebrities, HNIs who walk into our stores who don't quite want to be identified or bothered. So what we are piloting now in 2 stores is this Beacon technology, which will let us understand who the customer is, and we will have iPads in each aisle. So based on whom the customer is, we can customize what the iPad has at that aisle. The customer can see targeted offers, targeted products, recipes on their phone. And in that mode, we have used analytics to make the experience a lot more experiential for the customer in the store also. What we are doing also is at the billing point, a big pain point and why customers move online is the checkout is a painful process. So what we are doing is experimenting with technologies whereby there is a self-checkout mechanism whereby the MRPs of the product can be easily read and the teller is not having to scroll through 4 or 5 price options. So we are experimenting how to make the checkout process easier also. So our analytics have shown us that a big pain point has been that, and we are using such technology to solve that problem also. So for us, such technology plays a big role both in the offline and the online store, but analytics is what helps us drive what to install and what to use.
Okay, so you've mentioned a few things, and if you can elaborate on them, then I'll go to the other panelists. You mentioned you have cooking demos, live theater, the sense of drama, excitement which you're trying to whip in. Does this lead to increase share of wallet for you? Sure. Share of basket?
Yeah. Yep, in fact, so we are in the premium food space. So a big part of us is not just having your Cokes, Maggies, Ashirvads. It's about having products which customers find hard to access and to make it an experiential process. So what we do every now and then is we bring in famous chefs to our stores to do live cooking demos. We have kids cookouts at our stores. We have now experimented with a buffet lunch. So we are not just in the grocery space, but we will have food and coffee. So our key goal is how do we increase the repeat rates? Because we know our customer buys groceries every week to 10 days. And our goal is to be that one stop for the customer. And how do we get the customer in the store every week, 10 days, or on our web platform every week, 10 days is kind of our core focus. So for us, the drama, theater, and the experience is what kind of brings the customer to our store more often than not.
So I'm going to ask Arun and then Megha, how do you drum up the sense of excitement, drama, theater in an online environment?
Sometimes it's possibly the format itself. So if you look at what we currently sort of offer you, it's an exciting place. The way we format our business now, we're just not a catalog of products. We are more a sale event focused business. So we generate 75 interesting sale events a week. Mm-hmm. You don't know what's coming the following week. They last for a short period of time, so you've got to, pick and make that purchase within a typical 7-day window. So sometimes it's the format itself that has a lot of, excitement in it. So what this causes is that for a lot of our customers, they come back to check what's on and, what's new, all the time. Okay. So that's, there's ways of creating the excitement around it. So whether it's our email templates, it's the way in which we communicate to our customers, a very targeted group. We segment our customers, but our most loyal customers, we're now using means of communication that they want us to use. So for example, there is a core group who want us to communicate via WhatsApp. Okay. So we're doing that. It's very easy for us to. So there's a machine learning at the back that tells us what, if you've shopped for, say, men's footwear, the system tells us, throws up and says there is a men's shirt event that's on for, say, Arrow shirts on a 50% off, we will send that out and the system tells us that these 100 customers would love to probably buy this. So, but we are sending it off through WhatsApp because that's a method that a customer wants, to pick up rather than what we would like to send out. So we tailor it at the final end. So it's a mix of excitement, machine learning, data analytics, and then a very human, manner in which we push it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so being Snapdeal, of course, we are all about deals, and while we're trying to move away from that to some extent. But yes, so we do have things that we create, like we have a deal of the day every day across categories. So that really runs in terms of, every day people log in to actually see what's new, what it is, if it's something that they're interested in. Other than that, of course, we have a lot of activities that we do from time to time. So the latest one would be, say, something around Mother's Day, gifts for your mother, flowers, chocolates, so on and so forth, and creating a lot of buzz around it, just to give you a small example. So there would be similar events that happen from time to time, and we obviously create a lot of buzz around it. So whether it's Raksha Bandhan or it's Holi or Diwali, I mean, we've probably already started working on a lot of things for the rest of the calendar year also. So we plan these well in advance. We think about, and of course, again, analytics, I know we've spoken a lot about it, but that plays a very important part in reaching out to the customers, letting them know. When we have new launches, we do a lot of new launches. We have a team that works exclusively on doing exclusive new launches. So you'll see a lot of them in terms of, mobiles that we launch. I think there was just one recently also done. So there we do a lot of offline and online. We use social media. So we partner with a lot of people in terms of having fresh new assortment, different products, doing exclusive launches, doing activities around important calendar events that happen from time to time. So I would say it's a mix of everything that keeps it going, using all the media, online, offline, and ensuring, of course, at all points of time that we have the best prices and we have the biggest assortment that we could possibly offer.
But tell me, like Arun was mentioning, do you have targeted deals that are offered, or is it general across the board? I mean, do you analyze customers so that like you're saying, if somebody is buying a particular brand of shirt and you have a great deal, it just goes to, say, 100 or 1,000 customers and not to the whole world?
Yes, we do customized mailers that go out. We do look at browsing patterns and buying history of our customers and try to reach out to them as far as possible and letting them know that, this is something that you were looking at and you didn't buy, for example. So why don't you come on and buy it? Or this is a product that you were surfing and the price has dropped. Would you be interested in buying it now? Just to give you a little example. So we do keep going back to our customers and reaching out to them to tell them what's new on what they've been buying, or if they've missed out on buying something for whatever reason, they left it in their cart and they forgot about it. So we keep reaching out to them in whatever way we can, of course, without being too intrusive. And ensuring that they know what's happening around on the website.
Okay, I've spoken about this earlier in different forums. Even yesterday I mentioned one of the things we are trying to do in this whole shopping center business is to create the concept of experience stores. I showed a couple of videos. Unfortunately, it wasn't too clear, but experience stores where you actually can't buy anything, but experience the product, experience somebody there for us as a style guide or whatever the product or service is. And then you can place the order online and the item is delivered to you at home. So that's one of the models, from a shopping center perspective we're looking at, and I hope, some of the online guys will look at that seriously. But what's increasing now is a concept of click and collect. So experience stores, click and collect, I think they're all morphing together in some way or the other. So I'd just be interested in going through the panel and asking their views on, are they looking at these things? Is that experience, the real life experience, important to you? Is a click and collect model you're looking at? Is there something else? So I'll just throw it open here.
Yeah, I think so. Click and collect comes into play where the customer wants such convenience, so predominantly. If you see the West, the Marks and Spencers, John Lewis, the Walmarts, about 8 to 10% of their sales is now coming through this. What customers want is a quick checkout experience, and offering them a slight price discount as compared to home delivery if it's on the way. So it's both convenience of not having to walk into the store, find the products you want, check out, and just go to the entrance and pick up what you have bought online. And it gives you a slight price advantage as compared to home delivery, and you get it at a lot faster pace. So Click and Collect typically is available in about 6 to 8 hours for the offline guys. So we have started to experiment with this also, and also to have booths in corporates whereby the customer can shop online and go to the Indiabulls Center lobby and pick it up. So Click and Collect has kind of morphed into a few different ways in which the customer can experience both the online experience and the offline experience.
So, if I can speak about two aspects. One is that, I think we are super focused on how we can make your experience, which is supposedly a little inferior to the touch and feel that you get in a physical store, how can we take away that negative? Mm-hmm. Because if there is one thing, there's all kinds of positives on online, whether it's price, it's assortment, it's the ease of selection. But the one thing that still is a bit of an issue is the fact that, so I'll spend a little time on that and then another aspect.
Sure.
On the first one, we all have an issue with the size label on clothing, that an M of one brand and an M of another is a little different. The second issue is one of fit. Even if you said M, something is a slim fit, something is another fit. For women, it's a bigger issue because you don't know how it might drape or fall. But women in particular have a third concern, which in a sense is a little less on the men's side, but definitely on the women's side. It looks like a great garment, but I don't know how I will look in it. Mm-hmm. So these are three real issues. So the thing that we do is a try-at-home service that we have right across the board. I spoke about it earlier. It allows us to actually bring the trial room home. We're taking away the entire risk that you might find. And here's a very wide assortment of product. Select what you want. We come home. You keep what you like. What you're trying to do here is completely replicate what might be a physical store experience. You've taken your car, you've gone to a mall, you've gone to the store, you've gone to a trial room, checked product out and bought it. We are reversing that. Come to this wonderful large e-mall, pick up what you want, we'll come home and deliver it, keep what you like, right? So that's the, that's the first part. On another, so, elements like these, there's one other aspect that we do. For example, if you look at trousers and jeans bought online versus offline. Offline in a retail store, normally 60 to 70% of bottom wear is altered for length in India. So most retail stores have a tailor at the back, even small ones. Try and buy yourself a pair of jeans or trousers online. What do? If you want a length altered, there is no option. You take it out, go to a small tailor somewhere offline and get it tailored. We don't see the sense in doing that, right? So what we do is we offer you an alteration service, which means that anytime you buy product, first try it out, pay for it, because otherwise we can't exchange it once we change the size. You can call us and we'll come home and we'll pick up your product, we'll change this length and we'll deliver it back to you free. So what we're trying to do is replicate what you might find offline.
But tell me, isn't cost then an issue?
It's an interesting, if I go through a deeper sense of that, it's not an issue. Mm-hmm. Per se, the alteration might be a certain cost, but if you, through technology, ensure that you run what's a milk run, which means there is a delivery champ of ours who is going through a circuit. If you look at all the things he does on that circuit, is nothing but contact points. Somewhere he's doing a delivery, somewhere he's doing a return pickup, somewhere he's doing an alteration pickup. It's just a contacts that he's doing. He's not deviating from his loop, right? So if you see it as though someone is going specifically for that task and coming back, that would be super expensive. But if you run a milk run that lets you do multiple things and you've trained your champs to do multiple things, it's not. In fact, for various reasons, our cost of managing that loop, including the returns experience, because we track it even with couriers that we work with outside of the big cities, our own cost is actually lower.
Okay, that's interesting.
So one other aspect, so one is to do with some of these things that we do on the site to make it as close to your physical shopping experience. The second thing that we are noticing is a interesting move. We're doing some partnerships with some players and others are doing it themselves. I'll give you some examples. Those in Delhi would probably see a brand called Free Culture that has, I think, a set of 4 stores now in some of the best malls in Delhi. That store is a place where you can check the product for size and fit, but you got the entire assortment. You can place an order right there. So they're acquiring customers and they're doing the delivery is at home, but the trial and the checkout is in the store. Similarly, there are some interesting models that we are testing out. There is a player in Coimbatore who offers a virtual store in a mall. You can't, you have a screen and you can shop for product in that store, but the delivery is, and you could do it across online stores. So what you're doing is you're capturing the assortment of online within a mall, and there's someone who helps you with that experience, because a lot of people actually still don't know and not comfortable with the entire mechanism of picking up a product and placing an order. We must remember that 99 out of 100 people are still shopping offline and not online.
And I think also the payment thing becomes much easier, the payment issue.
That as well. So just the comfort levels, that's right, that's right.
Okay, Megha, some?
Yeah, so we've also done something like this with FinoPay Tech, and wherein we have tied up with them, where they have some of our top selling SKUs, about 1,000 of our top selling SKUs, which are available at their various points, and customers can actually go there and purchase it and have a look at it, and so it is something that I think everyone's dabbling in some way or the other. And I think as we are talking about convergence, this is something that I think eventually will all turn into a way in which customers are able to figure out a way which would best suit them, him or her, where some people I think would traditionally continue to shop in the traditional way, and others would move to maybe a mix of both. So this is something that I think makes a lot of sense for reaching out to and creating new avenues, and basically getting in customers who would otherwise be uncomfortable just shopping online, especially as Arun also mentioned in fashion, where the concern is really about sizing, and which is not really with electronics, because that if you're buying an Apple phone, then you're going to get an Apple phone. So that's, I think, where the difference would really come in.
Okay, so I have one more issue which I'm going to ask the panelists to respond to, and then we have got about a couple of minutes if anyone has any questions. I just want the panel to talk about, it's easier probably to do it in a Nature's Basket than some of the others, but how do you benchmark or measure customer satisfaction? How do you capture what are the irritants to business, what is nice to do business, what are the areas you can improve on? Typical customer satisfaction work.
Correct. So in fact, what we keep track of extremely closely is something called the NPS score, which is the Net Promoter Score. We keep track of it day after day, store after store, online, offline, over the phone. In essence, we ask the customer a simple question: how likely are you to recommend Nature Basket to a friend? And we give the customer a rating from 0 to 10. And based on that, we can calculate what is called the NPS score. We keep track of that exceedingly closely, and we also let customers give us feedback on things they want us to do, things they want us not to do. So we keep an extremely close tab of our customers both at the stores and on the online platform. In the online platform, we send emails to the customer. Our delivery boys have a handheld where the customer can key in their NPS score and also give us feedback on the experience. So we have a few touch points where we gather how the customer perceives us, and we keep an exceedingly close eye on it. So we change the look of our stores, we change the look of our web platform, all of this. How does it translate into customer satisfaction? So we try to use more of a real-time and an analytical approach to understanding this.
I think the ability to capture customer sentiment is actually a lot more online than it is offline. So to give you some sense of some of these, for example, on our site, as you check out, we give you a 3 smiley index straight away, and then there's a comment. It's surprising the number of people who leave comments. You know, some of them are not so nice, but a lot of them are nice, and you go back and. So that's a first point. Subsequent to the delivery, like most of us are now doing, the NPS is a very, very good measure. It actually allows us to benchmark ourselves against all other organizations as well. So we ask the NPS, and we try and analyze how good or bad we are. But we do one thing when we do, and we don't ask. That's the first question we ask. But we dive into a few other questions for those who have the time to answer it. It's online, so we ask you, what did you like about the product range and so on. So there is a lot of data that is coming back. So that's one loop. The second loop is those who call our call center or email us. There is straight direct feedback that is coming back on stuff that we have pretty much screwed up. But not just that. Once we sort that problem out, there is another emailer that we send out saying, how good or bad were we in sorting your problem out? I think the key here is that there is a lot of information that is coming back to us.
Okay.
I think it's important whether organizations actually first give it any importance, who is analyzing it and making use of that data, and the last part, how actionable are you in use of that data? I think that needs to be sponsored right from the top, culturally. Otherwise, this is like a lot of surveys. You gather a lot of info, and it's a lot of noise. You don't do much with it.
Sure. I think that's good,
Yeah, so I'm glad everybody brought up the NPS point. So I think that's something that we also as an organization take very, very seriously. NPS is something that we track again on a daily basis. Other than that, we also track, seller rating. So we ensure that our customers actually come back and when they give us feedback on the products or feedback on the seller, and obviously we would then promote sellers with higher rating, and I think customers over a period of time have understood that they would buy, being a marketplace, that they would choose sellers who have a higher rating. So very transparent in the feedback that we share about the products and services and how has been the customer experience. And NPS is something that we track very, very closely to ensure that we are able to work on the points which we feel really needs working on, and it's very actionable as mentioned by Arun, and something that you can really put into your day-to-day work, and it is shared right from top down. So we have reports that come in every day, category-wise, zone-wise, which actually helps us understand that what is it that we could improve on and how the customer experience can be enhanced.
Okay, so I think that is useful. I hope there are a lot of cues for the shopping center, the mall people here. A lot of things which I think are great learnings from each other. And we said right at the beginning, this is all about convergence and about sort of building on each other's strengths rather than make this an online, offline discussion. So if we have a couple of minutes for 1 or 2 questions. Yeah, sure. If someone can give them a mic. And if you can just identify yourself and tell us who the question is for. and then the panelists will answer.
Yeah, she's from Snapdeal. And one question I have, that you are dealing with 1 lakh suppliers in a marketplace. How do you control the genuinity of your products?
Okay, so we obviously work very closely with our sellers to ensure that we're checking genuineness of the products. So one way that we do it is that we actually take brand certifications from them, which are certifications that they get from the brand. So if you're selling a particular brand, you have to share a certificate with us that says that you're authorized to sell this brand, especially online, and therefore, giving a very clear indication that the product is a genuine product. If even after that there are products that slip through, and if we get feedback, we immediately delist those sellers and delist those products. It's a very rare thing that happens because we have a very robust system in place which actually checks the products that come in. We also have a fulfillment center model wherein a lot of our sellers are with us, and we have a QC team that actually checks the products that actually go onto the site and go out from there. So we work on it in a multi-dimensional way to ensure that at the first point itself, when the seller is actually getting registered with us, we understand from them what is it that they want to sell, and if it is not a product which they manufacture themselves and they are actually selling it on behalf of someone else, that they are selling authentic products.
Okay.
I hope that
One
answers your
small,
question.
yeah, very this thing. One small experience I'll just share with you in 2 lines. My kid is about 15 years old. He ordered a book called The Fate of Some Stars, something that's a rage in schools now. So he got it from a marketplace company, I'll not name the company, and he got a photocopy of the book. So when I took it home, he said, "Dad, do you have a photocopy?" So I said, okay, they have a policy of returning it. So we returned it. In exchange, we got another photocopy with 30 pages short. So then I gave it up. So then he went to a brick and mortar store and bought it. And his comment was, "Abhi main kabhi online nahi kharidunga." So he's lost his already, trust. So this is a challenge.
Right.
So many companies have to, overcome this. And dealing with 1 lakh suppliers is not very easy. I think.
So I agree. So I'm really not sure which website this was from, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't us.
Very renowned, equally renowned as yours.
Right. So we have a very, very large team that actually manages these sellers. So we have an account management team in place, and each account manager has only a set of accounts that they manage. For us, accounts are essentially our sellers. And we ensure that, they are trained completely, they understand what needs to be done. They are moving in the direction that we want them to move in terms of customer experiences. And, in case they are not aligned towards how online works in terms of returns. For example, this book that was returned should have been either, refunded or at least replaced from whichever platform it was bought from. We don't do books, of course. So I think it's very important that, as a company perspective, we work very, very closely with our sellers. So while we have a very large, seller base, we also have a team that works with these sellers to ensure that they are aligned in the right way. And if not, then we kind of, move them out of the system over a period of time. So that's how we manage.
Yeah.
I'm a mall owner from a tier 3 town. My question to you guys is, if we were to create experience centers or say a center with large touch screens, would any of you online retailers be keen to be there on that virtual space within a mall? And if so, how would you like to remunerate us for providing that space? And like Arun said, only 1 in 100 persons in India are still online. Maybe that will help you get more people online, and in turn also help us get on the convergence bandwagon.
I mean, we'd always encourage anything, of this nature. I was just making the point that we are working already with some players who are doing this. It's in different ways. So I'll give you two manners in which I'm seeing this evolve. One is exactly the point you are making. Either it's a touch screen or any other device that you might even have a desktop and so on. So that's one. And the other is a interesting way where there are providers, there are people who are connecting offline stores to extend their catalog of products. So you are an offline store and you are, say, a footwear retailer. You have X amount of inventory with you. How about tapping into a much larger inventory that might be available for that customer? So there are players who are actually bridging that experience as well. We are working with some of them, again, parallelly. So I think it's a move that is very interesting. I think it's needed. I think from a India perspective, it's a long while off before a large number. The use of word large is again because of this 1 versus 99. With a lot of noise around online, many of us are fairly large players, but the scope for this business can be a lot more because it's just a lot of headroom. So any of these initiatives, absolutely, I think, I'll give you one example. I don't know if you heard of, I don't remember the company. I read something recently of a firm that actually helps users actually download and use apps. It's a physical network of salespeople who work alongside mobile phone, retail stores. Their job, their revenue is coming from helping you navigate the app world. So, I think we need, players and services of this kind. We'd very much like to, understand how we can partner you.
Okay, we have time for one question if anyone has. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I have two questions. I hope we can manage it. One is towards Mr. Chopra. I have also heard about the Beacon's technology, and I think it's at a very initial stages in India. I'm from a mall. I'm from Ishanya in Pune, and we are also trying to, kind of utilize this particular technology in terms of having a better customer experience in the mall. One thing that definitely we know about the technology, it's extremely expensive as of now. So if you could probably give some insights on how are you working towards the ROI on implementing this technology. Also, there's a platform clash as of now. If I know, iPhones are still not, compatible with the technology. So probably, let's say after 3 years, if the whole mobile industry changes and there is a completely new operating system that comes in, how do you work around that? Because if you're going to spend a lot of money on the technology right now. That's one for Mr. Chopra. Another one is open to all of you. See, in the discussion that we just saw and heard previously, there was a comment that all the matured markets, they went through what India is going through right now in terms of brick and mortar versus online. And they have come to a stability right now. What would be, probably from your angle, what would be the final convergence, where we would see that, okay, online and offline are existing together in the market without really this whole fighting situation that we see right now, probably only in the mind. And what could be the top 5 probably outcomes of this whole convergence? Thanks.
Sure, thanks. So to address the first question, pretty much how we look at ROI is from our marketing spend level is, so we have split up our marketing costs to focus on new customers and existing customers. And the key goal for us is how do we, in the existing customer front, how do we increase the repeat rates and the footfalls per customer? And we believe, and so we are experimenting that, so we are an experiential store, so we are a premium end store. And for us, our world food offerings and our SOT technology will make us stand out versus competition. So we are, clear about that. And so we are sure that SOT technology will play a big role to build the experience for the customer within the store, whether it is recipes which the customer can see in the Thai aisle, or what the customer can do with tofu when they are in the tofu section. All of this is done through Beacon pretty much for us. So it allows us to interact with customers in a space which customers don't fully understand. So World Food is still a pretty new concept. So we track both the basket size per customer pre this SOT technology and post this technology, and we'll also keep track of how many more times does that customer come back to the store without the technology and with the technology. That would help us understand what the ROI is. So we are still in the experimental phase, but we are confident that this is the optimal way for us to spend some marketing dollars to get SOT repeat customers, as compared to doing things like leafleting or p-mailers, which have a cost to it. We think this is a lot more effective way to spend our funds on that front. Hope that helps answer the question.
It also needs an application download. So is there any particular way you will make sure customers download that? Because that's going to be another challenge.
Yeah, so the good part is that so the customer is in the store, right? So we can promote it in a very easy manner in the store itself. And that's an effective way for us to ensure that the customer does download it. So it is a platform for the customer to get deals, to get targeted information. So there is a big hook for the customer to download it in the first place. We have found a way around the iPhone issue. iPhone does make the customer click yes to give the app access to this feature, but it does work with the iPhone also pretty much.
Okay, any other comments from anybody?
No, on the other question is much debated. There are no answers. This is a moving river, offline versus online. I'd just like to point a few categories and try and point out what might be happening in this space. See, it's not about water settling down or things being steady overseas. I'll give you an example. If you look at the penetration of online in a purchase bucket, if you were to look at books and electronics, it's actually 50%, which means 1 out of every 2 books or electronic products is now bought online, say in the US. Most people don't recognize or don't know that the single largest category of e-commerce worldwide is fashion. Largest. In China, fashion is twice the size GMV of the next category. However, penetration is still low, which means that 1 out of 6 to 7 products that is being bought for fashion is bought online. So what is happening is online continues to grow, high double digits, in terms of year-on-year growth, and there is more and more switching to online. When will that settle? Will that be today is 15, tomorrow is 20? Can't say. But still, it's much smaller segment compared to physical. There are clear advantages. There are reasons why people want physical, and there will be reasons why people want online. I just want to make one point. If the product segment you're working in, or your marketing and your retailing, happens to be very determinate, a given SKU number, a style number, a model, or a product that is easily comparable, you know what you're shopping for. So, for example, I'll just take a very simple example. Things like grocery. I buy it regularly, I know how it looks, I know what it's priced, and so on, right? I think businesses like this will switch more rapidly online because the conveniences are there to see. So where will this settle? I think there's going to be an ecosystem where, there is a mix of, all of these in how we behave. There'll be a convergence where the online guys are going to look for offline, experiences. And anybody who's offline is and will be online as well. There is no reason for that person not to service a customer on the cloud. So, so that's a longer term coexistence issue, and I think it's not a debate, it's not a war. I think everybody is going to take benefits of both channels. These are two channels. One is a physical and the other is online, and both these players are going to take benefit of both these channels to run their individual businesses.
That's great. I think that sort of brings us to the close of this discussion. I think Arun summed it up nicely in the end. I think both channels will coexist, both should thrive. But I hope for everybody here, the biggest takeaway is what the panel has repeatedly given as examples is, what they're using is they're leveraging technology, but for good retail practices, which anyway people should do, whether you're in a brick and mortar store, you're an online store, to me it doesn't matter. If you can leverage technology, if you can understand customers, if you can maximize customer satisfaction in the shopping experience, then I think you will emerge a winner, irrespective of the channel. Yeah. So I want to thank the panel. We went on for almost half an hour beyond the allotted time, but I thought it's an interesting discussion, so we'll just keep it running. So many thanks, and I hope all of you enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. A big hand to Ms. Megha Ajwani, Mr. Samat Chopra, Mr. Arun Deshmukh, and of course our moderator, Mr. S. Raghunandan. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much to our panelists. And due to various unavoidable reasons, we shall not be having the last session. One of the reasons, of course, is several of you have flights to catch this evening. So we will request Mr. S. Raghunandan, the Chief Executive Officer of Virtuous Retail and the Chairman of India Shopping Centre Forum 2015, to make the concluding remarks of this forum. Over to you, sir.
I think we started yesterday. I know there were master classes held in the morning, but when we started yesterday afternoon, the whole theme was, how do you reinvent the shopping center? How do you make it relevant for today's consumer? And I think I'm happy to note, I think it's been a very healthy, constructive discussion and debate over the last 1.5 days. Lots of takeaways, I think lots of learnings for everybody. And I think true convergence is really, I think, what is happening, and we hope what will happen. I'm especially happy that we had in the last session some online retailers, because I think we need these new perspectives all the time, rather than just have the old, traditional people coming and saying the same thing again and again. So I think it's been a very healthy 1.5 days, and I'd like to thank everybody for attending. I want to thank Amitabh and Anjali and Mahua and the whole Images team. I think it's been very good. I'm particularly happy the attendance was good this time. I believe we had more than 250 people. Because this is not, this is, I think, a forum more for good discussions, introspection, debate concerning the shopping center industry. And I'm particularly glad that this went well. So I want to thank all of you. Thank you very much.